The figure of Caiaphas, the high priest during Jesus' time, is closely tied to one of the most pivotal and profound moments in history, the trial and crucifixion of Christ. In the Gospels, he appears as the religious leader who orchestrated the plan to condemn Jesus to death, driven by a combination of fear, ambition, and spiritual blindness. Yet, even amid this conspiracy, the events reveal that God's plans are sovereign and unfold regardless of human opposition. To understand Caiaphas' role, we must place him within the religious and political structure of his time. In the 1st century, the high priest was the highest authority in Judaism, responsible for the temple in Jerusalem, the sacrifices, and interceding for the people of Israel. He was seen as God's representative on earth. However, during the Roman occupation, the position became highly political. The Romans had the power to appoint and remove high priests, turning the office into a tool of power often associated with corruption and collaboration with the Roman authorities. Caiaphas served as high priest for about 18 years, an unusually long tenure, suggesting that he was skilled at navigating the complex relationship between Jewish leaders and the Romans. He was the son-in-law of Annas, another influential high priest, and together they formed a kind of priestly dynasty. Annas continued to wield significant power behind the scenes, and it is likely that both played complementary roles in the events leading to Jesus' death. The tension between Jesus and the religious authorities escalated throughout his ministry. Jesus directly challenged the corrupt practices of the temple, such as when he drove out the money changers and merchants, Matthew 21 verses 12 to 13. Moreover, his claims to be the Son of God and the Messiah were seen as direct threats to the authority of the religious leaders. In John 11, after Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, the Pharisees and chief priests convened to discuss how to deal with him. It was during this meeting that Caiaphas made a revealing statement. "You do not realize that it is better for you that one man die for the people than that the whole nation perish." John 11 verse 50. Although Caiaphas was speaking in political and religious terms, his words carried a far greater prophetic meaning. Unbeknownst to him, by condemning Jesus to death, he was participating in God's redemptive plan. Christ's death would indeed be for the people, not just for Israel, but for all humanity. The decision to arrest Jesus was made amid growing fears that his ministry could incite a popular uprising. During Passover, Jerusalem was crowded with pilgrims, and any disturbance could lead to a brutal crackdown by the Romans. To the religious authorities, Jesus was not only a threat to their positions but also to the region's political stability. Caiaphas and the other religious leaders devised a plan to arrest Jesus discreetly and bring him to trial. They found their opportunity when Judas Iscariot, one of Jesus' disciples, offered to betray him for 30 pieces of silver. On the night Jesus was arrested, he was taken first to Annas and then to Caiaphas, where a rushed and unjust trial took place. The Gospels describe this trial as a sham. False witnesses were summoned to accuse Jesus, but their testimonies were inconsistent. Finally, Caiaphas directly asked Jesus, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?" Mark 14 verse 61. When Jesus answered affirmatively, declaring that they would see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven, Caiaphas tore his robes in outrage and declared that Jesus had blasphemed. From that moment, the sentence of death was decided. However, since the Jews were under Roman rule, they did not have the authority to execute someone. Therefore, Jesus was taken to Pilate, the Roman governor, with the accusation that he claimed to be the king of the Jews, a charge that could be interpreted as treason against Rome. Caiaphas' role in Jesus' trial raises several spiritual and moral questions. How could someone who was supposed to be Israel's spiritual leader act so unjustly and conspiratorially? The answer lies in his inability to recognize Jesus as the Messiah. Caiaphas was so concerned with protecting his position and the status quo that he failed to see the truth before him. His spiritual blindness reflects the hardness of heart that can arise when pride and fear take the place of faith and humility. However, Caiaphas' story also teaches us about God's sovereignty. Even amid human conspiracy, God's plans were being fulfilled. The crucifixion of Jesus, orchestrated by religious leaders like Caiaphas, was the means through which God brought salvation to the world. In Acts 2 verse 23, Peter stated that Jesus was handed over by God's deliberate plan and foreknowledge, showing that nothing escaped divine control. Caiaphas' trajectory serves as a warning to all of us. It challenges us to examine our own hearts and ask, are we allowing pride, fear, or ambition to keep us from recognizing God's truth? Just as Caiaphas rejected Jesus to preserve his position, we too can be tempted to prioritize our personal interests over obedience to Christ. On the other hand, Caiaphas' story also reminds us of God's grace. Even in the face of rejection and injustice, Jesus offered forgiveness on the cross, saying, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." Luke 23 verse 34. This forgiveness extended not only to the Roman soldiers but also to Caiaphas and the religious leaders who conspired against him. Although the Gospels do not tell us what happened to Caiaphas after the crucifixion, tradition suggests that he was removed from his position a few years later as political instability increased. It is possible that he spent the rest of his life reflecting on the events that unfolded under his leadership. Caiaphas' story invites us to acknowledge God's sovereignty, open our hearts to the truth, and place our faith in Christ, who conquered sin and death through his crucifixion and resurrection. If you liked this video and want to know more about the characters that surrounded the life of Christ and formed the rich biblical story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and send this video to your friends. Turn on notifications to know when new videos come out.